because I had okay. Okay, so this month we are welcoming Leagh Matthews, who's going to talk to us about her book Forever Changed, which I loved, and so I'm excited to be able to get to talk about this. So I just thought maybe we could spend the first couple minutes getting to know Leagh a little bit. So I had a couple questions that I just want to ask about Leagh and her writing. And one of the things that I thought was pretty interesting is that her tagline is Rebel to Redeemed. And I was wondering if you would tell us a little bit about where that came from.
So, I accepted Christ when I was 5, but then as a teenager and young adult, I made a lot of mistakes. I was the prodigal child for a while, and I rededicated my life in 2008. But I've also struggled since then with sometimes just surrendering and giving it to God. So it's that rebellious nature to, how He can change your life and working your life when you'll give it to Him. So, and I'm working on tweaking my tagline a little bit, but on that a little later.
Gosh, well, I don't think any of us don't have a rebellious streak. That's kind of the part of human nature, right? Some of us just go further than others.
Yeah. A lot of my characters have that rebellious streak too. So.
Yeah, maybe Danielle a little bit.
Definitely.
No, that's great. So maybe you've talked about some different job challenges lately, but writing is not your day. It's not, I don't know. Most of us, it's not our day job. But do you want to tell us a little about what you do when you are not writing?
No.
Okay, great. You're allowed to say no.
I'm a volunteer coordinator for a hospice company at the moment. They're going through some changes, so we'll see where that leads. I also have a 10-pound pooch who's playing right in front of my feet. And so he keeps me busy, and I've been helping my mom because she had 2 major surgeries within 10 months. So I've had a lot of caregiver challenges as well lately in the last 2 or 3 years. So
yeah,
a lot going on.
I would say so. I don't think 10-pound pooches are any less trouble than 100-pound pooches. So.
No, he's a baby, and he lets you know. He's very, very, this is his house and it's his way. We're just here to serve him.
I have a cat like that.
Yep.
I think all cats are like that.
Yeah.
Does he join you when you're writing?
Yeah, a lot of times. If I'm sitting here in the recliner, he's usually in the floor in front of me or by me or something. But if I'm if I recline out on the couch, he'll nestle up right beside me and lay right beside me and go to sleep while I write. So
are you a relaxing writer? You like to sit back on the couch with your laptop in your lap?
I do. And I have a bad back, so I've got to get comfortable if I'm going to write. So
that's am I allowed to ask other people questions? What do other people do when you're writing? Do you sit at a desk all proper, or do people sit on the couch? I'm curious.
I sit at a desk, all proper.
All proper.
I sit at when I'm creating, I sit at my kitchen table, but I have a pad for my chair that helps keep me erect, thanks to an MD that talked about having that proper posture. That really helped me. I'm not sitting in it right now, but when I'm writing at the table, I do. Now, I have a desk too, but I really like to be creative in the kitchen.
I'm with Leagh. Give me the couch
that I look out. So
you're a couch. Yeah,
I have this amazing. Let me see if I can turn it so you can see it. I don't know if you can see out that window.
I like your kitchen.
No,
I see the window in the back.
Picture window right over here to my right.
Nice.
Picture window that looks out on a park.
Oh, how nice!
So
you can show my windows.
yeah,
there you go.
I prefer to be at the kitchen.
Oh, very
table.
nice.
Those are pretty.
That's why I would rather
make it
create
work, and
right
it's just
here.
not working. I can't get it to. Now that's okay. I know what the problem is. I need to turn it around, and then maybe it would do it. There we go.
Oh, that is
Oh, yeah.
pretty.
That's
Wow.
pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, there's no one right way to do it.
No,
Nope.
I don't think so.
That's good.
I know
So-
one author that sits in her bed and writes on her laptop while she's sitting in the bed. And I don't think I could do that. I'd just go to
No.
sleep.
No, bed's for sleeping, not for reading. I would fall asleep too. That's funny.
Yeah, my back wouldn't like that. Sit in a bed.
Me neither. So, do you have a schedule when you write, Lee? Or you just
I
do it
don't.
when you can
So
find, huh?
the last 3 years it's been harder. Ideally, what I do is I get up about 30 minutes early and right before work because I'm freshest first thing in the morning. And so by the time I'm done with the workday, I'm just done with as far as creativity. So that's when I do
Smart.
email, social media, anything else, any other writing related tasks. It's
Right,
not
right. That's smart.
creative writing. But when I'm off, days off, weekends, things like that, a lot of times I'll spend, a couple of hours writing as well.
That's great. But I have one more not book related question, and then we can dive into the book. So this is why we're all doing what we're doing. How do you ensure that what God wants you to say is what's coming through in your stories?
Well, I pray beforehand, but then a lot of times it just spills out because I'm constantly, whatever I'm doing, just have an ongoing conversation. So sometimes I'm not planning something and a character stops and breathes a quick prayer or says something, and I'm like, wow, I can't believe I said that, And then I think, do I believe that? Is that right? Is that true? And I'm like, yeah, that's so sometimes I surprise myself, but
Love that.
if I'm having a really hard time, I'll stop and, ask the Lord to help me, but I pray before I start writing too. So
That's great. No, clearly God's message is coming through in your stories.
well, good.
Yeah.
That's what I want. So
Okay. Now we can talk about the book. But I just think it's nice to get to know a little bit about you first. So I have lots of questions. I'm sure you guys have lots of questions. Does anybody else want to ask a question about Lee and Forever Changed? Or do you want me to go through?
I literally just finished it.
Okay.
That's why I was running late, because I was like reading as fast as I could. I stayed up late the last 2 nights. Yeah.
At least it's fresh on your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was saying I read it back in January.
Oh,
That's kind of hard.
The thing that struck me about this book was so you get through the whole first 100 pages or so, and Danielle decides she's going to stay. Any other book, that would have been like the Hallmark movie and we would have been done. And I'm like, oh, there's so much more depth to this story, which I like. More things just kept happening. And I'm like, this is great. Because, that's the kind of thing you can see. Oh, this person has to change their life. And now they decided, oh, forget the career. I'm going to be with the family. And that would be the end. But I loved that there was so much more to it than that. And you explored all those other things. I thought that was really cool. That's something really struck me.
I wasn't sure she was going to stay at that point. I was still like, I think she's going to back out. I don't know.
She wasn't sure either.
Yeah.
That's funny. What about the rest of you? Was there anything you were really surprised about in the book? Or did anything surprise you during the book, Lee, while you were writing
it? It did. So I stopped for about 18 months because I didn't know how I was going to get them out of the financial mess, all the other mess. And there were 3, I ended up having to cut 4 chapters because of length. So I cut 3 chapters where Trevor's parents came and caused all kinds of trouble. on top of that. So I was like, how do I get them out of this? I never dreamed till it came out of Danielle's mouth that they would do a reality show. Never dreamed until it came out of Caleb's mouth that they would build their own studio across the street. None of that was planned. It was just, I was like, what? So
that would have been my answer. That was what I was most surprised about. Like, they're building a studio.
Yeah. So she can tell I'm a pantster when I write.
Me too. I was kind of surprised that there were 7 kids. 7. How'd you come up with 7? That's a lot.
Okay, you may partially know this answer. So my desire has always been to have a family and to have a large family. And it never happened to have anyone, even one child other than my 4-legged child in there. So a lot of that comes out of my desire. And that was part of the inspiration to writing this book, was just my desire to have a family. And I thought, well, what would happen if you suddenly pretty much inherit somebody else's family?
Right.
So
that's really nice.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine, even after it would be like, I think that you really explored Danielle's emotions on all of her questions and all of her, like, what? You know, like, you want me to do what? And how could you? And then the love that she had, especially for the little ones, you know, and the grandmothers, just like, I think kind of crept in there for her and grounded her in a way that she had never really experienced before.
Yep. As hard of a time as Leslie was giving her, she needed some love and some grounding. So
that was nice of you.
Yeah.
I'm wondering did Megan have these people helping her before, or was she doing everything on her own?
She was doing everything as in my imagination. You know, she might occasionally have had them because it said, you know, Dee Dee said, let me take the kids for a couple of hours while y'all go out on the boat. And that's when they had the accident. So, you know, they might have occasionally come along and said, hey, you know, I'll give you a little bit of a break or something. But no, they weren't helping out like they did with Danielle. But I mean, there's no way Danielle could have walked into that without any kind of help or assistance. So
no. I mean, they were the hens. They were great.
Well, I was like, I was tired of writing all the names, and I was like, I've got to have some kind of terminology to refer to them. So I was like, I don't even remember how I came up with hens, but it seemed to work.
It works. Yeah. I think too with the kids, when you have kids, you don't just, most of us don't just have 7 at one time. You know, because my son has 1 and he's always like, how did you raise all of us? And I'm like, well, I didn't have you all at once.
Right. A cousin who had 8. And she's her initials are CQ and her email is CQ8 is enough.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, there are several families in our church that have a lot of kids, and it's just the mom and the dad. But it's true, when you don't have octuplets,
right?
You know, you have all that, and clearly Leslie was helping with the little ones, you know, and the older ones, everybody gets a buddy.
Right.
Yeah.
But that was a lot of helpers.
It was.
Clearly a blessing for her, because she kept leaving.
Yeah, she did.
What, she's leaving again? How could she be leaving?
But you can't blame her.
I know. Yes.
Anybody ever read Cheaper by the Dozen?
Yes.
The old book. I loved it so much. Set in those times when, you know, they could all fit in the car and it was crazy.
Didn't have to have them
But-
buckled in a seatbelt,
but
right?
they
Right.
had responsibilities for, the older ones had to
Mhm.
take care of the younger ones.
Yep.
The middle ones were responsible for themselves.
Mhm.
And that was it. But they had to take care of themselves. And it, my brother and I were 7 years apart, and I love those books, I think, because it gave me a sense of this huge family that I didn't have,
Mm-hmm.
but how there were all these duties that also went along with having all these siblings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm. It's good for kids to have some responsibilities, I think,
Oh, yeah.
like
Oh, yeah.
that. So yeah.
Absolutely what my cousin did. They all had their jobs and they knew, and she ran a smooth ship. But
Mm.
they said it was
That's
enough.
good.
I mean, I just can't
Right.
imagine.
And then there were two grandmothers to take care of too.
Yep.
That
Exactly.
would be
Mm-hmm.
crazy.
So it wasn't just 7 kids. So
It was really like having 9 children.
right. Right. Let's talk about Caroline a little bit. So I was going to ask you if you have any experience with dementia, and then I'm like, oh, in the author's note. So you have had a little experience there in writing her. You want to talk about that a little bit?
So I assisted my aunt and my mom taking care of 2 of my grandparents, my mom's mom and my dad's dad, for a combination of the two, almost 30 years. And they both had dementia the last couple of years of their life. I was also a private caregiver for a while. And then I have worked, I was an activity director for 7.5 years in a skilled nursing facility. So we had all ranges of people from, extreme dementia up to completely with it. I've been in hospice for 3 years, and I teach and train on dementia as well to people that work with them, to caregivers and all. And I even do a dementia dialogue where I get in character as Edna. I have a wig and all, and I talk about what it is like to have dementia. And we go through from the very beginning, the early symptoms up through discovering the diagnosis and slowly. And then she has a roommate at the very end of it. And so, and it's very much educational. And then people always have a lot of questions for her once it's finished. So, it's a very important part of my life, and I've been surrounded by it for all my adult life. So,
I'm listening, y'all. I've got to step aside for a minute.
Okay. No, and I had never thought about that before, but I love that relationship that she had with the younger children.
Yeah.
And how, they kept giving them like Danielle was learning that and she was researching that. And over time, she's like, this is her mentality. And I thought that was really special. So I learned something there too, because I haven't.
And then I'm sorry, go ahead.
Because she was to the point she couldn't do a lot, and that was based off of working on memory units, where their dementia has evolved and over the course of time, and their abilities just isn't that much, so they really are on that wavelength at some point with those younger kids. So it just made it easier and more natural to write the scenes of her with those children. When you're trying to incorporate such a large cast at times, it's interesting how to do it without completely overwhelming, but make sure everybody gets their equal time, so to say, as well. So.
But I loved how the Granny, Caroline's mother, how she still was involved with her daughter's life and had vowed to always be part of that. That was really neat.
And that's very rare. I mean, to live to 100 and see your child and take care of your child like that. But she really leaned into her faith with that.
Right.
So.
Well, yes, of course, we have to spend a lot of time talking about her.
Yes.
Where did that idea come from that she was going to be able to talk to her?
I have always loved programs like Quantum Leap and Freaky Friday and different things like that, and read books, with something along those. And I didn't know at first who Shell was, other than, you know. So, but she just naturally, she just appeared out of nowhere. And so I was like, okay, let's see where this goes. So, yeah. So, she's a nice surprise, but I really love her. So,
yeah, that's the kind of thing that I love. Like when you read a book, you don't get to find that out, but finding out that you didn't know that she was going to be Granny when you started, like that's great.
Yeah.
I didn't know either. But,
yeah.
No, that was.
We got the wrong Taco Bell order.
Uh-oh.
My husband was talking a little loudly about it.
You're funny.
We'll just have to eat it. I'm not going back up there.
That's fair. But yeah, no, I don't, it's funny because I don't remember it because I read it twice. So the second, because like you were saying, it was a while ago that I read it and I needed to remember if I was going to be talking about it tonight. And so this time around, I knew from the beginning that's who it was going to be. But so if anybody oh yes, for like you, Jennifer, because you just read it. When did you figure out, or did you figure out when it was going to be Granny?
Oh, that it was Shell?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not good at like, oh, wow, that's what it is. So pretty much it had to hit me over the head. Like, oh.
You are not alone, Jen. You're not alone.
I am not. Yeah, I don't pick up on stuff real quick. So,
and it is a fun dance trying to not to give enough hints, but not to give too many hints. You know that.
And then I got worried because Shell was like, "I'm going to be going away," and I'm like, "Oh, Granny's going to die. She can't die yet." So thank you for not killing her off too soon, because that would have been.
Yeah, I did not have the heart to kill
Granny
off. I couldn't do that. So yeah. She's just, I don't want to say she's the Granny you always wanted, but she's just one of those, But she gave Danielle a hard time too. And I had a lot of fun finding terminology from the 1930s that she could use on Danielle. So.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, Danielle needed somebody to talk to her straight.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And Grant and Shell understood because she had been there. She had been in New York and pursuing her dream and all of that. So
right. We didn't know that till the end.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So okay, bye, Tammy.
Bye, Tammy.
So, oh, that's loud. Sorry, the dehumidifier just kicked on. Let me turn that off.
I had an old dog that was sitting by me breathing hard, and I thought, oh my gosh, I bet everybody going to hear him going out. He's 16, and he just, there's certain things that he just makes a lot of noise.
That's funny.
I have all these people in my house because we're all going to graduation tomorrow. So I'm like, I'm going to the basement. That's when the dehumidifier is. So sorry about that. So you've already kind of said that maybe Danielle's life, what she dropped into, was inspired by what you thought it would be like to inherit a family. Are any of the other characters inspired by anybody that you have met?
They are. Well, Grandma and Granny are a combination of different people because I've been with senior adults. I attended my first senior adult meeting when I was 17 days old.
Oh.
So I've been with senior adults all my life, literally. But I have two mentors, Dee Dee and Cherry. And so they, they were kind of the hens, the most prominent that you see. And then I had two kind of residents when I was in the nursing home. There was Doris, and she had just died, and when I was writing that, and so she had been there like 8 years, and she ruled the roost. She thought she, there wasn't anything hardly she didn't find out. And then Phyllis had come for rehab, and then came back and volunteered with me, and she had passed away. So it was kind of like a way to honor them and all. And I was like, well, I need somebody to kind of help out with grandma and granny because others are helping out with the kids. So it just kind of, so yeah, they made their way into it. So
that's nice.
Yeah. So they're actually based off of those characters, but you didn't get to quite see how sassy some of them could be in real life.
Ooh, I think they hit an age, I'm sure we will too, that all the filters are gone. There's no filter whatsoever.
Exactly.
Doesn't matter.
My mother-in-law admitted that.
Yeah, my mom's like that.
At one point, she finally just said, I say things I shouldn't say.
Well,
my mom will say, I probably shouldn't say this, and then she'll say it anyway. And I'm like, why do you even, say that in the first place? Because she's always kind of been that way, but now she's like, I'm almost 90. I can do whatever I want to.
Yep.
There's some freedom in that, right?
Yes.
That's
and when you're 90, you can get away with it a whole lot easier than when you're not 90.
Right. That's true.
That is true.
My grandmother lived to be 98 and a half. And she was so proud. She counted down from 6 months before her birthday to her birthday. So that's why I say the half. But she was never 89 because her 89th birthday, she said, I'll be 90 in 365 days. I'll be 90 in 300 days. And she counted down until that 90th birthday. She had no idea there was still 8.5 years left. So, it's a badge of honor when you get to be 90.
Yeah.
Especially if she could still do that.
Yeah.
My mom that's her goal
too, but she didn't have her mental faculties about her, so
yeah,
it was hard.
Yeah. Well, you need somebody like Leigh around if you don't have your mental faculties. She knows how to take care of all those people. So
need somebody like that.
Right. What about Sally? What do people want to say about Sally?
I don't know. Are you going to write a book about her? Because you kind of let her go back to New York and she's hanging out in the wind and we're all worried about her.
So when I wrote Forever Change, I did leave her ambiguous, thinking, well, if I ever decide to write a sequel,
Right.
But it was meant as a standalone. But spending a year and a half going through edits, Sally spoke to me, and I have started Sally's story.
Okay.
So,
good.
Okay.
I
felt like, well, two things really. I felt like Caleb wasn't very nice to her. Some of the ways he talked to her, I was like, dude, no. But I felt like, not that she deserved it in any way, but I felt like she truly only went after him because he was like the only decent looking guy around, and I don't know that she really cared about him.
She wanted more than anything, she just wanted to be loved.
Yeah.
So
I did like that her in the end, she said, well, if he's not going to be with me, I'm glad it's you. Like, I thought that was so. Yeah, there was a whole story of oh, that's so exciting. So we're going to hear more about Sally.
Yes,
that's good.
Yeah, Sally and several other characters spoke to me, and I've got ideas. So
nice.
Ideas are good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because I felt like with Sally and New York and Danielle trying to warn her, it was, I mean, this was probably not meant to be some deep thing, but what I was thinking about it is like, how much does that happen where other people have already learned these lessons and they want to help you, but we are not willing to, like, we have to go make those mistakes on our own kind of thing. So,
well, I know I was guilty of that. People tried to tell me when I was making mistakes, you shouldn't do this, or, I've done this and I can tell you, but, I was so hard-headed and stubborn. I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. And then down the road, it's like, I wish I had listened to that person. So
my daughter has a kitchen towel and it says, everything Mom told me was right. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, probably not, but
I bet your mom likes that she has that kitchen towel.
It's my daughter's kitchen towel about me. Everything Mom said was right.
Your daughter has that. Oh, wow. You have all the right answers. Oh, that's funny. But no, I liked seeing Sally's journey, and I feel like, yes, there is a lot further for her to go. So, yeah.
In a way, her journey was kind of like Danielle's, like it was behind Danielle's. Danielle had come along, and here comes Sally doing the same kinds of stuff, really. Running away, doing, forcing these situations, even though she'd been warned, like you just said. And yeah, I'm curious to see how that's going to turn out.
No, that's neat. It's neat. What did I was going to say? Was there anything that was hard for you to write about in this book?
I didn't look forward to writing, what happened to Grandma at the end. And I knew that was coming. Hard to write about. That was a hard one. There might have been other things. The hardest thing was figuring out how they were going to get out of the financial mess. Like I said, I had to take quite a break as I kind of figured that one out. There might be other things that'll come to me later, and I was like, oh yeah, but I think Grandma was probably the hardest part, because by that point you're attached to her.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I haven't killed off anybody I was particularly attached to.
we just kill off people we don't like.
Well, I figured Grandma was better than Granny.
You kill off everybody.
I didn't have the heart for Granny. But part of it too is I was trying to make a point with dementia and the fact that so many people with dementia, when they fall, and especially if they're like Grandma, that they were constant walkers. I've seen this time and time again in the facilities. If they're constantly moving and walking and then they fall and they're not able to keep going and all like that, usually it's just a very, very short time. So I was trying to send kind of that message as well, to educate on dementia without just being blatant in your face.
Oh, no, it wasn't like that at all.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like you were trying. I mean, I was educated, but I didn't feel like that was how it was portrayed at all.
So I will say, after Caleb and Danielle kind of sort of got together, and then they're pulled back apart and they're kept apart for so long. And that was hard at times to write some of those those scenes because you want to make them lovey-dovey, and it's like, oh, wait a minute, they can't, they can't be in that type of thing. So that was a different kind of hard than writing about like grandma and what happened to her and all. So,
so can we talk about Caleb now?
Of course. Sure. There's no order.
I'm teasing. My favorite part was when Caleb and Danielle sat down with Leslie and talked about that Kyle. And he said, men will say whatever they want, whatever they have to get what they want. And then he gave her very concrete examples. And I was like, oh, this is awesome because, that's what teenagers need to hear. Or young women, older women, maybe. If a man is a scammer, if he's not a good guy, he will,
Well, and both of my relationships were abusive. And I wish that someone would have told me and had these conversations before I got to the point I wasn't willing to listen, where I thought I was so in love and I thought I knew it all. I think if I had been better grounded and educated in that, I might have made different choices. So, I will say that one of the scenes I had to cut, or one of the chapters I had to cut, was my very favorite. And the fact that Caleb gets tired of watching Kyle treat Leslie bad, and he forms a boot camp with Kyle and the boys, and they have a boot camp. So I kind of have been working on fleshing that out into a longer story, sort of as a lead magnet or something, but it still needs some work before it's ready. So, but I hated to cut it, but it did not. It kind of just cut into the flow of the story. So,
yeah, cutting scenes, that's just painful.
It is. It is.
Like you go to all this trouble and you write this and, well, this doesn't need to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can relate to that. That's funny. Who else wants to talk about Caleb?
He had some issues. And I was like, dude, get over yourself. But he had to work through.
Yep. And that's what we all have to do.
Yeah. That's true.
Well, Lee just kept throwing stuff at them all the time. Of course they had issues. Now we don't know what's going on with the estate, and now all of a sudden this is going wrong. That's going wrong. And
that's real life, though.
Yeah. Somehow they managed to do everything that they wanted to do. That was, I still can't believe you built a studio across the street.
I couldn't either. But it was kind of like, how do you solve this situation? And she can't keep running off to New York or wherever to film, even, and usually TV movies are filmed in about 3 weeks or so. But even doing that a couple of times a year, it's just gets to be a lot when you've got a farm and 7 children that need you. And Caleb's helping, but they're not married yet. So, it's like, okay, what's the solution to this? And Caleb just gave it to me. So.
Yeah. I enjoyed him punching her co-star.
He needs a little more maturity, but he's getting
Yeah. I like that scene. Yeah. But my favorite scene was when Mandy spit up all over Joel.
Yeah.
I love that scene. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't like him very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't take her very long to realize that she didn't need to be with him after she left.
Yeah. It really didn't.
Mm-mm.
And you were very honest, showing her thoughts about that, how not just morally, but how the progress went from having these hopes and dreams, wanting to be a star, and then kind of settling for less than what could really happen in her life, because it sounded like he would feed her lines, we're going to do this or we're going to do that, but he wasn't following through. He was just using her.
Yeah. And sadly, there's way too many individuals like that. I mean, we see it in the news time and time again. So,
yeah.
Well, it kind of ties into what you were talking about before with them warning Danielle about Kyle.
Leslie.
Right, Leslie. Warning Leslie about Kyle, that Danielle had gotten those lines.
Right.
Well, I mean, and she even says, I can't even remember this boyfriend's name, a boyfriend or two ago, and things like that. So,
yeah. Well, when you run away from everything and your faith, that maybe she never really had that faith in the first place. It was her family faith. And she was looking for someone to love her. And if you don't, but if you don't have that real love, if you don't have God's love, anything else is just kind of a substitute for that, right? So,
but it wasn't until she came home that she found God and God's love, but she found what genuine, love was, with the children and the hens and the grandmas and all that. So that's when she really started to open up and to blossom.
Yeah, I always have trouble with, and this is, I mean, I guess it is technically time travel, with time travel things, but I was thinking about that with Granny, that, well, Granny now already experienced being with Danielle as a young woman, so she knew Danielle was coming back, because I guess she always knew her name was Danielle. But it's like, I wonder if when Danielle was born, she's like, oh, that's, that's the girl that,
Exactly.
So is that considered a time slip? Isn't that what you write, Ellen? Time slip?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of different categories in that. Like if characters move back in time, that's a time travel. Or even if they move up. So like, the presence in the modern day, that might actually be time travel. Dual time or split time is usually at least two eras, and somehow there's a connection. It's not immediately known, but you have to weave that in there. That's probably the hardest part, is, when I'm thinking about the historical, even before I'm writing it, I have to think, what's the connection to the current day? Besides just maybe the place. There needs to be something more than that.
Yeah.
And it's never really explained in the book how that happens, because I never figured it out, to explain it. But it also provides a faith message, because Granny says to her, some things just aren't to be questioned. And there's a lot of things in life that we don't understand that's just not to be questioned. So I thought that aspect of it, left a strong faith message. So
I like to think of that as faith more than science fiction, aspects of it.
Absolutely.
Truly. Some could argue that, but I don't. I mean, I think we've all had something going on that you can't explain, and it's more of a faith-based thing than it is science thing.
Right.
Or at least those who have faith, I think, attribute it that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, that's true. But yeah, that was just something that I was thinking about after finishing it. Like, wow, at what point did Granny realize that this was going to be her great great granddaughter?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and she grows up and she looks, and then Dottie comes back and I know you.
Yeah.
Did you all see Peggy Sue Got Married?
The
movie, it had.
I don't think I've seen it. No.
You know, it's one of my favorite movies, and it truly is a time travel thing where Peggy Sue is having problems with her husband, and they're going back to a high school reunion, and she's feeling bad, and then all of a sudden she's back in the 50s again. She's going through high school again. And she's thinking, I can change my life. I can make decisions that are better. And I don't know. It really spoke to me. But in that, she tells her grandmother back in the 50s that I named my daughter after you.
Oh.
And she said, oh, how sweet, how wonderful that was, because her grandmother didn't live long enough to meet her daughter. So she was telling her grandmother, she told them that, you know, she was a time traveler or whatever. And they sort of were like, oh, okay. But she said, I named my daughter after you. And then, you know, it really meant a lot to her about that. So
that's funny.
A little bit of the same feel.
Yeah.
So.
But that one, truly, that main character, you know, goes back, and most of the film is her dealing with that, as with all this adult thoughts and feelings, and you know, she takes everything back with her.
Wow. But don't we wish that we could at times? Because I'll tell you, there's times if I could go back and tell my 17-year-old self stuff and avoid some of the mistakes I've made.
Oh yeah.
So
one of the first things I would tell myself is study harder. You know? And my daughter, we were talking about it recently. I've always told her that she just didn't work to her full potential, and she was talking about her youngest son who's not working to her full potential. She says, I know, Mom, I know, he's just me made over again.
You know, that's really ironic, because I would have told my high school self to relax a little bit.
Oh, study less. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you don't have to be perfect in all this stuff. Like, you don't have, you know. Yeah. So you and I, maybe we just need to balance each other out a little bit.
It is true that, you know, your kids do that, pick that up. I know our son stopped by here last week, and he was talking about our grandson's Eagle Scout project and how he just keeps procrastinating. And I just looked at my son and just started laughing my head off, going, there's nobody in this room that would do that.
No, that's funny. And that's where my husband was very much like, he didn't want his kids to make the mistakes that he made. I'm like, you can't tell them not to do that. That's the way because, you know, but yes, the hardest things for us are the things that we have problems with, right?
Exactly.
Right. Other people that are doing the same thing. That oh, that's neat. So, where'd the Indian burial ground come from? Is that some?
From the area 96, because the Cherokees actually took and you know, they were in that area when the settlers started coming up and everything, and so I needed some way to keep Mr. Cox from taking the land.
Right.
And so I thought, well, the Indians were there, so to find the Indian burial ground, it would keep him from taking the land without you know, really causing a ton of other issues and everything. And so I had to research, like, what are the options and what could, you know, what would happen if they actually found something like that and all that. So
yeah, that was a great idea. Yeah.
So, and I loved being able to incorporate some of the history. I actually had to cut a good bit of the history just because it was it made it choppy and not
Yeah.
flow so well. Because some areas were just so history heavy and rich in there. But I love that, I could just share the history of that area and all, because
That's
it's
one
a,
of the
it's a
things.
small town that, nobody's heard of, but it had a major
So it's a
role
real
in
town,
it's a real
96.
town. Real town, population of like 2,000 now.
Okay.
Yeah. So, so I had to go to that area about a year ago, year and a half ago, for work. And I went by Starfort and everything. And the interesting thing is I'm driving down all these back roads where there's just woods and trees looking for the entrance to Megan and Trevor's property, looking for Danielle and Caleb. And I was finally, after a little bit, I was like, they're not real.
Not really.
But it was like, but that would be a great driveway. And
Right,
I love this land, and this would be great here. And,
yeah.
and all that. So the characters really do become real to you. So
Yeah, they do.
do.
Yeah.
I would like more of, what do you call him? Pop, right? Who's wearing a wire and getting the guy in jail. That would have been fun to flesh out that a little more, but he seems like a good guy.
yeah.
Caleb's dad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I liked him, and there were so many characters already. He didn't get a lot of airtime, but yeah, I liked him. So
yeah. Well, that's
You
what
did a
happens.
really good job keeping the characters, like making it easy for the reader to know who was
good.
in that scene and who was speaking and all. Because, like you said, with that many people, sometimes it's really hard to designate who's talking and who's even participating in that
Right.
scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to agree, because there's books I'm like, which is that? And I never felt like that in this.
Good.
Yeah.
I don't really know Austin from Houston, but that's probably okay.
Yeah. Every now and then I'd be like, okay, he's a twin.
Right.
They were the mischief makers,
Right.
So.
Right.
And like Ellen was talking about Cheaper by the Dozen in the Steve Martin one, when he did it with what's her face. Anyhow, they have the twins. And that's who I thought of when you said Austin and Houston. That's who I pictured, were those little mischievous little boys.
Right,
yeah.
right.
Cute.
Cool. All right.
I missed the very beginning. This is your first book, right? That you've published?
This was my second published one.
Oh, okay.
Carol of the Rooms came out about a year and a half ago.
Okay.
And it's very different from Forever Changed, but it's kind of a retelling of A Christmas Carol, in which the main character, Terry Neely, hears the soundtrack of her life by visiting her past, present, and future.
Oh, tell me the title again.
Carol of the Rooms.
Okay, I'm gonna write that down. That sounds fun.
Yeah.
I was in a Zoom meeting or something, and somebody was saying something about these redos of fairy tales and famous stories type things are really hot right now.
No. Well, there you go.
And I know that by the time we're hearing about it and we're writing about it, we're kind of behind that trend. But I just thought I would mention that, since we were talking about things like A Christmas Carol.
Right.
So I wrote Carol of the Rooms in 2015. Right. And I started it because I had been deeply hurt by somebody, and I was just starting this really mean, nasty character, and I thought, well, he's a lot like Scrooge here. So it gave me a little bit of a backbone for, creating the story. So.
Oh, that's great. Make something good out of it,
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
So we're coming up here on the end. So tell us what you're working on now.
too much and not enough all at the same time.
Yeah, we can all do
I've got several novels doing rewriting and edits on, and I've got about half a dozen I've started. I
Wow.
need to finish and more ideas than I have time for. But probably the one that will be out next is going through critique group at the moment.
Okay.
And it is a story that incorporates all the major and many of the minor holidays.
Oh.
And it was
Oh.
inspired
Uh-huh.
because I was an activity director for 7.5 years. And when I left, I grieved it. I grieved leaving, and I was so burned out, but you celebrate every single holiday. And so it really kind of helped me to grieve and to come to terms. So it's a romance that incorporates a year and a half worth of holidays.
Wow.
Okay.
That's neat.
That'll be fun.
I should send you like I had a Christmas novella last year, and it's about a woman who knows that she's going to pass away, and they celebrate all the holidays like to give her one last.
Oh, how
Yeah.
cool.
So you would probably like that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but wow, well, that sounds fun. No, I would like that. So
Yeah.
we'll stay tuned.
Yes.
So who are we introducing for next month?
Me.
Jennifer.
Yeah. We're going to do my first book, which is
Okay.
not that I have that many out. My
Birds
first
Alive.
book, Birds Alive. Yeah. Lee asked me for a little blurb the other day. I'm like, I'm gonna have to go look it up because I am so single-minded. I did not realize that, but the second one came out while I was working on the third one, and I finally had to put the third one to the side. I'm like, I cannot. I don't know who's doing what, and I'm gonna give something away, and I don't know. A matter of fact, I was talking to one. I think it was my daughter-in-law, and I was telling her something, and she's like, I don't know anything about that. I'm like, that's because it's in the third book. I'm just.
Okay.
Yeah, we just start talking about all of our imaginary friends, and people are like, what? And I'm like, oh, it's a character. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It's funny. I started reading Jen's book, and I thought, I've read this before. I must have read it about 2 years ago.
Yeah, I know.
But I recognized it as the first few pages.
Yeah.
Did you say Burnt Alive?
Birds.
That sounds way better. Birds Alive. I'm like, Burnt Alive? That sounds terrible. Okay.
Burnt Alive. Yeah.
I
do.
the first
It's a classy mystery.
I read the first 5 pages, but that was because it was in the Scribnings. You put it in the Scribnings. Yes.
Yes. I entered
So
it
that's
in
where I first
Novel Starts.
Novel Starts. Yeah.
And I think it won first place in mystery, and then I finally finished it. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
And so I sent it to Linda, and she picked it up.
Okay. No, I don't start the next book until after this.
And you can tell, see, I have to read it really close. I'll probably reread Birds Alive because I read too much and I read too fast. So, yeah.
I read that one a really long time ago, John. Yeah, I'll probably have to read.
Me too.
I wrote my last two so close together, I kept getting them mixed up.
Yes.
You have to separate them.
Yes.
I was brainstorming with a friend yesterday, and we were talking about it. I'm going, she'd ask a question, and I'd say, "Now wait a minute, who are you talking about?" Because it would be like, I have to go back and find the book and make sure we're on the same character.
Right. and writing the third book, so there's standalones, but there's one bad person who's in all three. So writing the third book, I have to catch her. It's a woman. To get this bad person who's been like the mastermind behind all this.
You better get her. She needs to be done.
I will. I have to figure out where she is because, like Lee, I am a pantser. And things come to you at the weirdest moments.
I know.
Yeah. Very strange.
And that's a lot harder to be a pantser when you're writing a cozy mystery than a romance or women's fiction, I would think.
I don't know, maybe.
Maybe.
It's all
I know.
I wrote a women's fiction, but I haven't published it, so.
I know that I'm trying to write a little romantic comedy, and it's killing me. It's killing me. Mystery is where I belong.
Yeah.
Well,
You do find your,
My brain thinks death, death, death. I mean,
right. Who can we kill?
no.
Can you not kill somebody in a romantic comedy? I think you could kill someone, Ellen. I think you could.
Not in this one. I mean, I was going to tell Lee, I've got 4 kids in this one, and I'm having a hard enough time trying to keep all the personalities different and making the voices different. And gosh, imagine doing 7. I feel like, The Sound of Music.
Right.
I feel like Maria, a captain and 7 children. Oh,
right. Yeah, she didn't have all those helpers.
Right. No,
she did not.
No, she didn't.
No.
She didn't. But anyway, that's,
All right. Well, I'm going to wrap up. You ladies feel free to stay and chat as long as you like. I had to go get ready for this weekend. But thank you, Lee, for sharing your story with us.
Yes.
Thank you.
Look forward to Jen's next month.
Let's see y'all next month.
Yeah.